Hello, beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today in this video, I am finally going to be discussing all of the books that I read in the month of April. I know this is a little late in the month, but better late than never, they say. In the month of April, I read 7 books for a total of 1,977 pages and an average star rating of 3.21 out of 5. Not a bad reading month by any means. The highest rating I gave a book was a 4-star. However, I am definitely hoping that next month will be better, or this month, because I'm filming this in May. I hope this month's reading will be better because I want to actually finish my TBR this month and hopefully I will have some 5-star reads, maybe. The first book I read in April was for my children's lit class. Crazy to think that now at the time I'm filming this, I'm going to graduate in a week and I'm never gonna go to an undergraduate class again. Maybe never even another class, period. But wow, this is a tangent. Anyways, the book that I read was Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. I gave this 3 stars. I don't think I really need to summarize this book because I feel like even people who haven't read it have heard of this book and know what it's about. This book follows a girl named Alice. She falls down a rabbit hole and gets taken to the weird world of Wonderland. Well, say that 5 times fast, I dare you. And I liked this. I don't want to be too harsh on it because I definitely was not the target demographic of this book. I know so many people love this story. It's a classic for a reason. I think I was probably a little too old to fully appreciate it, and I also generally don't really enjoy weird books. I know some people like that a lot, but it's not as much my thing, and that's very much a matter of personal taste. I really don't have much to say about Alice's Adventures in Wonderland because, like I said, I think it's just a matter of personal preference. There aren't many things that I can point to and say, this was bad, I didn't like it because of this. I think it is entirely subjective, and I can totally understand why somebody would love this book, especially if it was read to them when they were a child. For me, I thought it was cute, but it really wasn't my sort of thing. Next, I checked out a book from the library. The next 2 books I'm going to talk about were actually both from the library. And the next book I read was Goodnight Beautiful by Amy Molloy. This is a thriller, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. My cat is meowing at me because she wants to go outside. Do you see her? There she goes. After I finish this video, you can go outside, okay? Practice our patience. All right, so Goodnight Beautiful follows a newlywed couple, Sam and Annie, who move back to Sam's hometown. Sam is a therapist who is setting up a practice, and what he doesn't realize is that somebody can overhear all of his therapy sessions through the vent. And this eavesdropper and the information they discover might throw a wrench in Sam and Annie's happily ever after. This book employed some very clever narrative trickery on the writer's part. I had read Amy Molloy's previous book, The Perfect Mother, which I think I gave 2 stars. I thought it had a lot of potential, but it just wasn't a favorite of mine, and there were many things that I wished the novel had done differently. However, I do think Amy Molloy is a very clever writer. There were 2 major instances of narrative trickery, I will call it as the best thing I can think of to describe it, in this book that I know a lot of readers did not see coming. And I think that's because the author knows readers' expectations, and so she knows how to take advantage of that in order to trick you. And the first reveal, we should say, I actually did see that coming, but I think that is in part because it was very similar to something Amy Molloy had done in The Perfect Mother. And so I thought, I wonder if this is what she's trying to do. And it was what I thought. However, there was another instance of narrative trickery that completely, did you hear the cat? Did you hear the cat? That completely caught me off guard. I'm gonna have to film this video really quickly because she's gonna meow at me until she gets what she wants. And so in the second reveal, Amy Molloy totally pulled the wool over my eyes. She got me good. I was really impressed with what she was able to pull off in the first half of the book. However, the second half just really took a turn and went in a direction that I did not really love as much. The second half of Goodnight Beautiful is paying tribute to a classic work of suspense horror fiction. Drizzle, stop meowing at me, please. I am filming a video. Oh my God, Drizzle, stop. Stop it. You're so cute, but I'm busy. You were just outside for hours. I feel like this is gonna be the most chaotic video ever because my cats will just meow and meow and meow at me until I give them what they want, and she's not gonna give up easily, but I'm gonna persevere. So, kind of lost my train of thought, but like I was saying, the second half of this book is paying tribute to an iconic work of suspense slash horror fiction that I may have read within the last year. That's a hint. And because of that, I just wasn't as invested in the story because it was now going in a predictable direction, and I just really didn't love the turn that it took. I thought the first half of the book was really clever and I was enjoying it a lot, and the second half, while not bad per se, was just not as enjoyable for me personally. Next, I read another thriller, Darling Rose Gold by Stephanie Roble, and I was a little torn about my rating for this book, so I ended up just going with 3.5 stars. For the majority of the book, I was leaning towards a 3-star rating. However, I thought the ending was really clever and well executed, so because of that, I was tempted to bump it up to 4 and just decided, split the difference, 3.5 stars. Several years ago, Patty Watts was sent to prison for poisoning her daughter Rose Gold over many years. Patty had Munchausen by proxy syndrome, which caused her to make her daughter sick for attention. However, Patty is adamant that she would never hurt Rose Gold. Now that Patty is finally being released from jail, Rose Gold, who is now an adult with a child of her own, tells her mother that she can come live with her when she gets out of prison. But this may not be a happy mother-daughter reunion. It seems to me like this book was very much influenced by the Dee and Gypsy Rose Blanchard case. If you're familiar with that true crime story, it received a lot of media attention several years ago. And I do think sometimes when people summarize this book on BookTube, they give away a little bit too much because there were some things that people told me about the book that I think you're not really supposed to know at the beginning, so I was very intentional about my word choice when I gave this synopsis. And for a majority of the book, I thought I knew where this was going to go. It seemed like it was headed in one direction. It's definitely not the most twisty thriller I've ever read. I think what was interesting about this book was the characters of Patty and Rose Gold and their twisted relationship. If you enjoy thrillers about extremely unlikable characters who make questionable decisions and are very morally gray, then I think this would be a good book for you. It almost in some ways reminded me of a Samantha Downing book because Samantha Downing writes about extremely messed up characters. So if that's something you enjoy, I think this would be a good book for you to read. If you are someone who likes thrillers that have constant plot twists and reveals throughout, I don't think this would be a book you would enjoy very much. I did, generally speaking, know where the ending of this book was going. However, when everything started to fall into place and the truth was revealed, it was done in a very clever way that I really appreciated. So I have to give Stephanie Roble major props for execution because I think the ending was really, really good. Next, I wanted to discuss two more books that I read for my class on children's literature. The first of which I'm going to go through rather quickly, and that was Mrs. Piggle Wiggle by Betty MacDonald. This is a work of children's fiction that I'd never heard of before. It's from the early 20th century, I think like the 30s or the 40s, and it follows this eccentric woman named Mrs. Piggle Wiggle, and she gives the parents in her neighborhood eccentric cures to help alleviate their children's bad habits. I thought this was a cute story. I gave it 3 stars. However, it doesn't really have much of an overarching plot, and it ends extremely abruptly. Betty MacDonald started writing the Mrs. Piggle Wiggle series after she left an abusive marriage to support herself and her children, and you know what? I support you 100% in that, girl. You get out of that bad marriage. You make that bank for your kids. I support you. An issue I had with this book is I think that the way weight is treated is at times problematic, and also it definitely includes some archaic gender roles. The fathers in this text are a majority of the time not very much involved with raising their own children. And obviously this is a book that was from the 1940s, and so these things would have been very common beliefs at the time. However, as a modern reader, I didn't love those parts. Hello, Editing Jackie interjecting in here really quick. I look like a little bit of a mess because I walked out into that Florida heat and my hair did not like that. But one thing that I found genuinely hilarious about Mrs. Piggle Wiggle that I forgot to mention while I was filming this video is how it satirizes parents who think their kids are perfect, and also the weird names that parents give their children. There's this recurring plot device where every single chapter the parent will notice a problem their kid is having and they will call around the neighborhood until eventually another parent says, hey, you gotta go to Mrs. Piggle Wiggle. But it'll be so funny because the main parent of the chapter will call up the neighbor and saying, I don't know what to do. You know, my kid, little Timmy, he doesn't want to eat his vegetables. And the other parent will just be like, well, I don't know what to tell you because my children, Wenceslaus and Angina, they always eat their vegetables. And it's just genuinely hilarious. Good to know that in all these years, annoying parents and the weird names they give their kids have not changed. Also, another Drizzle cameo. Drizzle, you want to say hi? She just wants to go to sleep. Okay, well, back to past Jackie with the video. And the third and final book that I read for Children's Lit this month was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl, and I really enjoyed this. I gave this 4 stars. I think I may have read this when I was a kid, but I don't really remember. I know I definitely saw the 2 film adaptations, but reading this now, I thought it was such a cute story, and I really did like it a lot. Willy Wonka is an eccentric chocolate maker who years ago disappeared from public life after spies were reporting on the goings-on in his chocolate factory, but now he announces that in Wonka chocolate bars will be hid golden tickets, and the children who discover those golden tickets will get a full tour of his chocolate factory and get to see what goes on inside the factory. And so our main character, Charlie, is a boy who is growing up in poverty, and miraculously, he discovers one of the golden tickets, so he goes with his grandfather to visit Willy Wonka's famous chocolate factory. This was such a cute story, and I think some of the illustrations were just so adorable, and I actually felt a genuine emotional connection to Charlie. I think even though it's still highly sanitized, it depicts the realities of poverty in a more realistic way than I was expecting it to, and because of that, I just felt a really strong sense of sympathy for Charlie, and I wanted him to have happiness because I cared about him a lot as a character. And overall, it was just a really fun story, whimsical, and it also had some pretty dark jokes that I definitely did not remember as a kid, but they were there. Now, the biggest issue I had with this book as an adult and a 21st century reader was the Oompa Loompas. As most of you probably know, the Oompa Loompas are a race of tiny beings who work for Willy Wonka in his chocolate factory. And when you examine them with a critical lens, you realize that the way these Oompa Loompas are used as a labor force is really kind of unethical. There are jokes that Willy Wonka makes about how he tests his products out on the Oompa Loompas, which is concerning when you think about it logically. And also, the original illustrations in this book depicted the Oompa Loompas as a non-white race, and that has some really problematic connotations, especially when you consider that the Oompa Loompas live their entire lives in this factory since they have come to work for Willy Wonka, and they only get paid in chocolate. It's not exactly an ethical labor force. The illustrations were changed in later editions, and Roald Dahl did acknowledge that the original illustrations were offensive, so I do appreciate that they acknowledged that mistake. However, even taking the racial connotations aside, the way that the Oompa Loompas are treated is just completely unethical. So, overall, really cute story. I enjoyed it a lot, but there are definitely some aspects of it that did not age well. Next, I read a book that I was very highly anticipating and that I feel like pretty much everyone on BookTube has read except for me, and that was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I read Circe by Madeline Miller, absolutely loved it, so I was hoping I would absolutely love this one too. I ultimately ended up giving it 4 stars. The first 75% of this book, 5 stars. I was loving it. But the last 25% made me so angry and frustrated. The last 25% was probably 2 stars, so I figured a 4-star rating was fair. The Song of Achilles is a retelling of the Trojan War from Greek myth, primarily following the relationship between the warrior Achilles and his lover Patroclus, and I really did enjoy the depiction of their romantic relationship in this text. That was definitely my favorite part because, honestly, generally speaking, storylines about war or scenes about war are not that interesting to me. I said in my Goodreads review that usually when I'm reading a historical fiction or fantasy novel, I just skim those bits because it doesn't interest me nearly as much as the personal relationships and character development and political intrigue. That is personally what I like about historical fiction and fantasy over the battles. But I really did enjoy the relationship between the 2 main characters, and this book had amazing writing, just as the other book I read by Madeline Miller did. I think she really has a skill at writing, and she writes these lines that just really resonate with me on an emotional level. However, the last 25% of this book made me so mad, and I kind of wanted to punch Achilles in the face because he was being such a jerk, and I hated him. What was really surprising and disappointing to me about this book was how little we got to see of any of the female characters, and I guess to a certain degree that shouldn't have surprised me, considering this was about Achilles and Patroclus and the Trojan War, and obviously they didn't have women fighting in the Trojan War. But the female characters that were present in this text felt really underdeveloped to me, and I almost felt like some of them were done a disservice by the text. One of the reasons I loved Circe so much was because I loved the main character, and I loved how it was able to take Greek mythology and do a more feminist spin on it, whereas in this book, the female characters experience so much trauma and loss, and it's really not dealt with at all. The parts about Iphigenia, I was shocked that we only had like 2 pages about it. I couldn't believe that that plotline wasn't given any more discussion, and I don't think Iphigenia had a single line of dialogue in the book, and hashtag Briseis deserved better. That's all I'll say. I mean, that girl was done dirty, okay? She was wronged, okay? And personally, this is a personal thing, I cannot give a book 5 stars if it has no female main characters, because I can just always connect with female characters better than I can connect with male characters, and I want to hear their opinions. I want to know what they are thinking and feeling, especially when they suffer like they suffered in this book. And it just felt so wrong to me that we only saw the female suffering through a man's perspective. That was really disappointing to me. I loved the first 75% of this book, but the ending was such a letdown. I really did not like it, and I couldn't sympathize with Achilles at all during that part of the book. So overall, while I still liked this, I am definitely now more excited to pick up A Thousand Ships, which is a Trojan War retelling that centers on the female characters, and possibly also The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker, which is narrated by Briseis. Let me know in the comments if you have read either of those books, particularly Silence of the Girls, because it has been on my radar, but I have heard some people say that it's basically A Thousand Ships, but not as good. So let me know your thoughts. Should I read both of these books? Let me know. And the final book that I read was also for class, possibly the final book I will ever read for class in my entire life. That's weird to think about. And that was The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy, Gentleman by Lawrence Stern. Unfortunately, I only gave this 2 stars. It was really not my thing, and had it not been required reading, I would not have finished it, to be honest. This is a really weird book. I don't know how else to describe it, and as I mentioned earlier in this video, I don't really like weird books that much. This book doesn't have much of a plot at all. Things happen, but things also don't happen at the same time. It has a very self-aware writing style, and Lawrence Stern is really trying to subvert all the novelistic conventions in order to defy readers' expectations. The title character, who is the narrator of this book, talks directly to the reader and goes off on so many tangents and divergences. He begins the book by narrating his own conception. Yeah, and it takes over 200 pages, I think, for him to even be born. So that lets you know how many tangents this narrator goes on. I did not give this book 1 star because I appreciate what it was trying to do and how it was trying to cause the reader to think about the novel as a form. Why are certain things in the novel the way that they are? And what am I going to do when the novel subverts my expectations? There were some funny moments in here. There is one part where, as you're reading the book, the page numbers suddenly jump forward 10 pages. And so Tristram tells you, the reader, oh, well, I had to rip those 10 pages out because that chapter was so good, it would have made every other chapter look bad in comparison, which was genuinely funny and a really interesting thing to do. There's also a lot of dirty humor in this, which is not my thing at all, but you know, some people like that. I think ultimately, while I appreciate what this was trying to do as a book, it was boring. There was no plot, no real character development or growth, no overarching storyline, and it was just not my thing. So we made it to the end of the video. I was thinking I was never gonna get here, but finally finished, and my cats will be happy because that means they can go out to the screened-in porch, which they love to do. They would live out there if I let them, and they just sit by the door and scream until finally I go crazy and agree to let them go outside. But anyways, those are all the books that I read in the month of April. Let me know in the comments section, what did you read in the month of April? Have you read any of the books that I read this month? I would really like to hear your thoughts. Overall, not the best reading month I've ever had, but it's all good, and I'm optimistic that this month is going to be better than April. Thank you so much for watching this video. My social media links are down below if you want to follow me on Tumblr, Instagram, or be my friend on Goodreads. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a delightful rest of your day. Bye, and I'll see you in the next one.